Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello, friends, and welcome into another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day on this April 26, 2021, here in the beautiful city of Chicago. I hope each and every one of you had a wonderful weekend. And on today's episode of Sports from the Couch, I want to talk about the NFL Draft and more specifically the Chicago Bears and what exactly they're going to do this coming Thursday with the 20th overall pick if they stay at pick 20. It's going to be very interesting to see what Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy do with what we assume is their jobs on the line this coming up season. But before we get to all that, we got to take care of some housekeeping notes. Make sure you're following us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Support the network on Patreon, patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. You can like us wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and while you're at it, please leave us a comment, give us 5 stars, wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. And we have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Finally, if you would like to keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network, from the True Crime Show, the Pop Culture Show, our sister podcast, the Gone Missing podcast, the interviews with athletes and celebrities we do, follow us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves.
The most anticipated NFL draft in recent memory is about to get underway.
Now, you guys ready to get started?
He's 6'6", 220, making those moves in the open field.
Touchdown, BYU. Some shot, and Pitt's got it. Touchdown. Pitt scores it.
Sertan got it for Alabama.
Excellent tackle. Patrick Sertan.
Fields looking to throw.
Down the middle of the field. Passes on. Jamar Chase. Touchdown, LSU. ETN showing his power and speed.
Wait, to the run, to the 10, to the 5, he's in there.
Touchdown. Devontae Smith cannot be stopped. With the first pick.
All right, friends, before we get too far into this conversation, let's kind of set the table of what we can expect for the Chicago Bears this coming up Thursday, Friday, and, of course, Saturday into the NFL Draft. The Bears have the number 20th pick in the first round this Thursday, the number 52 pick in the second round on Friday, and number 83 in the third round on Friday as well. On Saturday, they pick in the 5th round at number 164. And in the 6th round, they have numbers 204, 208, 221, and 228. And if you haven't been doing a lot of research or you haven't been following the buzz when it comes to the NFL draft, if it's just been crazy because of the pandemic and you haven't really been plugged in, the mock drafts have the Bears either trading up to go into the top 5 quarterbacks that are projected to be going in the first round, as well as cornerbacks and maybe a wide receiver. That's kind of what the poll has been for the Chicago Bears. So I went to the Chicago Tribune and I wanted to see kind of what they were doing locally. And Brad Biggs landed on the Bears picking Mississippi wide receiver Elijah Moore in his second mock draft. Well, in his first one, he had the Bears selecting Virginia Tech cornerback Caleb Farley. So in that instance, you see a local reporter, somebody who's completely plugged in, is not going with the national trend where people think that they're going to move up to try to get a Justin Fields. And look it, full disclosure, you guys know here on Sports from the Couch, I think the Bears, one of the biggest mistakes amongst the many Ryan Pace has made as Chicago Bears general manager is they don't go after a quarterback draft after draft after draft until they landed on one, which was something they said they were going to do. And again, I'm going to hold you to your word, and you didn't do that, Ryan Pace. But with that, I think at number 20, and if you're not out of town stupid, and that's the term we use here when we're talking about national media, the Bears are going to need to fill a hole after Kyle Fuller. The defense is getting older. And the way the offense is set up and some of these one-year deals and the guys you're bringing in, you're going to need some youth and some guys under contract that you can control and try to keep this defense afloat. As much as this team needs a quarterback. Now, the NFL Network's Daniel Jeremiah and ESPN's Todd McShay, along with Mel Kiper, had Northwestern's cornerback Greg Newsome II going to the Bears at number 20 in their most recent mock drafts. So even the insiders at this point, the national insiders, have kind of gone away from the Bears in the quarterback conversation. And I wonder how much of that has to deal with the Russell Wilson effect. Whether people still believe when it's more probable, when at least it's more capable of a move to be able made, I should say, of contracts and cap hits, that they feel the Bears are going to go in that direction. And it's going to be interesting to see what Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy value at this point. Because you bring in Andy Dalton, right? After you're not able to make this huge deal, you don't give Mitch Trubisky that fifth-year option. You failed on that one, right? And we'll see what he does in Buffalo. So that's a failure. What are you going to do now? How are you building this team? Are they really targeting somebody specifically, seeing if they drop to 20? Are they targeting somebody in that top 10 range? Are they looking to move up? Are they going to just try to build assets? If the draft falls to them, do they feel that they can move back? See, this all really changes because of the Allen Robinson one-year deal, right? The franchise tag. You bring in Andy Dalton. It's going to be interesting to see with David Montgomery because I doubt they're going to extend him to a long-term deal. So you're building this team to do what exactly? Are you rebuilding? Well, if you're rebuilding, that means that you feel, if you're Ryan Pace and or Matt Nagy, that you're going to have time to see it develop. See, that's what's really fascinating to me at where they're at. And this is the frustrating thing of the Chicago Bears and them in this particular position they're in this draft. At number 20. It's all because of a damn playoff game. This team had a 6-game losing streak last season. Found a way to get into the playoffs because Arizona lost. So they backed their way into a playoff spot. Embarrassed themselves on Nickelodeon, nonetheless, right? The holy land of Nick. All to be at a point where there's plenty of quarterbacks to go around in the top 10, and you're nowhere near them. And the worst part is, though, even if they were in that position, right? Even if they were able to get Trevor Lawrence, do you trust Ryan Pace or Matt Nagy at this point to develop and then to be able to scout well enough to build around a quarterback that isn't literally the greatest of all time? Right? Because here's the thing. Had they drafted Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes, do you think it would have ended up the way it did for Kansas City? Or it's been for Houston with being able to rely on Deshaun Watson? That's how bad things have been for the Bears. So at number 20, they're going to need a miracle. And look, it's the NFL, right? We know stars are created everywhere in this draft. And there's going to be a lot of guys who are first-round picks who never do anything. And guys who are in the 6th and 7th round who are going to be superstars. It's a cold world in the NFL. And we're rooting for all these dudes. But do you trust Ryan Pace to make the right decisions in the first round? You got to give him credit. He has found some gems later in NFL drafts. It has been one of his strongholds. But you can't miss in first rounders. That's how you lose a job in the NFL. Consistency in the draft is how guys are able to maintain a career as the front guy in the head office chair. And Ryan Pace hasn't done that. At least not to this point. You can keep going on guys that he has hit on. But the fact is he did draft Kevin White and a Mitchell Trubisky. He did bring in Nick Foles, traded away assets, and paid for him. Mike Glennon. There's only so many opportunities you would think a guy like Ryan Pace is going to have. And all that, the narrative that we have and that we've built and we've seen over the years, they're at pick 20. Are they going to be conservative and go best available? What does that mean? Is best available a wide receiver? Are you investing in this offense for Andy Dalton? Are you planning on making a move for the quarterback come June? Do you think somebody's going to play poker with you in that sense and try to make a deal? The Bears put themselves in a horrible position. They're in this position because they weren't able to get the best out of the guy that they drafted. And look we've all seen it, right? That Matt Nagy, his evaluation list of quarterbacks is a little different than what the front office had when it came to the Bears, right? He didn't have Mitch the way Ryan Pace did. Okay, that's fair. But your job is to develop this guy, right? And you couldn't do it. So now I'm going to trust you to develop another guy. And here's the thing. If it were that Mitch was never the goods, right? But you saw some form of development, then you could say, okay, let me see what happens if I got him somebody, a special quarterback. This is Ryan Pace thinking of Matt Nagy. That wasn't the case. We never saw a true progression for Mitch Trubisky, a true one, a next level one. Even if it went from a 1 to a 2, a 5 to a 6, we never saw something like that. So it's one thing, I could keep harping on Ryan Pace. That doesn't mean Matt Nagy, if it were a different GM getting him his quarterback, that it's going to work out for him. We don't know if he's Andy Reid. We want to pretend like he was. The front office wants to tell us that. Ownership wants to tell us that. So at this point, come Thursday, it is such bad brand awareness, exposure, whatever word it is, that nobody trusts this organization for what they're going to do on Thursday. And it almost seems, and maybe this is fair, maybe this isn't, this is all obviously conjecture, and I could be 100% wrong 5 years from now, and that's when we'll really find out, right? That's the frustrating thing or the unique thing about the NFL draft, just kind of like baseball. It takes a little while to see everything play out, and that's why I don't project stars or project players. First, I'm not smart enough, and second, we just don't know, because it's all about where you land. You could be Trevor Lawrence and end up in Jacksonville, or you could be somebody like Zach Wilson, end up in New York, or Justin Fields in San Francisco. And just a scenario of playing for the 49ers opposed to the Jets. It's just a world of difference. But for the Bears, it almost seems like we're all just kind of waiting for them to mess this pick up. And I think other than getting a top tier guy, right? Like one of the main top 3 quarterbacks, Mac Jones, in this draft, unless they go backwards and get a bunch of assets, I think for the most part, people feel that they're just not going to make the right pick. Even if they do get a solid cornerback or a solid wide receiver, just the sentiment and the energy going into this draft, the ill will or whatever goodwill this organization, this front office, this coaching staff had is all gone. They have no one to blame besides Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. So I'm fascinated to see what they do Thursday with the 20th overall pick. If they keep 20th, if I have to make my guess, my projection, I think the Bears trade back in the NFL draft. I think unless Justin Fields falls to them, I think they're going to more than likely stay put at 20. But if anything happens for the Chicago Bears, if there's any movement, if there's any surprise for the Bears, it's that they're going to move backwards. That's where I project Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy will do for this team. I think they're just going to try to get as much assets and just as many bodies as they can into this team. And we'll see how it plays out with them. Let's see if anything, let's see if they end up being in the top 5 and they trade the entire franchise to see if they could get Mac Jones. I'm interested, but we'll have more about this draft coming up, what the Chicago Bears and the rest of the NFL would do starting Thursday, as a franchise can be changed by just one selection. It is one of the best times in the sports calendar, the NFL draft. We'll have it all covered here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves. But with that, Let me know your thoughts. Who do you want to see the Chicago Bears draft? Do you want to see them go up and get a quarterback? Do you want to see them trade away number 20 and get more draft picks and get a quarterback later on? Do you want them to still go all in on Russell Wilson? I'm on Twitter at Mike Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and of course follow us on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk and let us know what you think your Chicago Bears will do starting Thursday in the NFL Draft. And that'll do it for us on this edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Don't forget, you can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Support the network on Patreon, patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. You can like us wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and while you're at it, please leave us a comment, give us 5 stars, wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. And we have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Finally, if you would like to keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network, from the True Crime Show, the Pop Culture Show, our sister podcast, the Gone Missing podcast, the interviews with athletes and celebrities we do, follow us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Enjoy all the games, take care of yourself, take care of each other. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.